Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Rough Rider is the house brand for Smoky Mountain Knife Works, and it's probably one of my favorite brands of knives. And the Scout knife is probably one of my favorite patterns of knives. So when I came across these knives some 10 years ago, I really liked them. And they are a little bit unique among the camp knives. It's patterned off of an old case camp knife that was using this old style can opener. And that's one of the things that I find really interesting in this knife. And I have actually opened several cans with it. And I decided I would do a little video showing you just how this can opener works. So we'll fade away and take a look at that video and then come back to this. Not beans, blood. Not the safest of can openers. So, as you can see, the can opener is not the easiest to use. In any case, Rough Rider makes this knife in two handle materials, an amber jig bone and a red jig bone. They've been making this knife for quite some time. I think the pattern numbers give a clue. This one is the 533, the amber jig bone, and this is the 573. And I think the 5 means that it was the 5th year of production of Rough Rider that these knives came out, which would mean these knives have been around for well over 20 years, and they have been off and on in the line. This one here, the 533 amber jig, if you can see here, it's got the, let's see if I can get that to show up, the Rough Rider propeller for the shield. This one, the 573, the red jig, is using the modern modern bow tie shield, and that's because this one I just recently came across. The 533, the 533 I bought when it first came out, and I actually bought a 573 at the same time. So I had an amber jig bone and red jig bone, and the in the propeller shield. I actually gave away the red jig bone to my son so he could have a nice knife. I've also seen this in the bomber shield. In any case, the blades you have with it, as you saw just a little bit ago, is the can opener. And I'll tell you now, this can opener works a whole lot better as a box cutter than as a can opener. And even Case stopped making the knife with this type of can opener and switched to the safety can opener, which you see here. And that's a much better can opener to use. And if you're looking for a camp knife with a good can opener, you may be disappointed in this one, even though with a lot of practice you could probably use it safely, but not nearly as safely as a safety can opener. So keep that in mind when you're looking at purchasing this knife. But still, the can opener is kind of an awesome looking little device. Very old-fashioned can opener. This is one of the first type of can openers you would have found on a camp knife, dating all the way back to the early 1900s, even into the 1800s. That's how far back this can opener goes. But after 1947, Imperial came out with the safety can opener that we just saw. And by 1952-53, just about every camp knife had switched over to the safety can opener simply because it is so much safer to use. So let's move to the next blade. So next up is the cap lifter screwdriver. And as you can see, this has a nice long blade to it, which I really like. And this is typical on a lot of the Camillus camp knives, as well as the Case. It also has it, and the main reason this Case cap knife has this style of screwdriver cap lifter is because this case knife was actually made by Camillus. So it's just something to keep in mind. In any case, you have the longer screwdriver here, which I find much more useful simply because you can reach more things with it. On most Boy Scout knives and also on this Baron Son, you'll always see the short screwdriver. I don't like it as much, even though it might be working better for a pry bar. However, you really shouldn't be prying with your screwdriver. If you notice here, the one on the Rough Rider is longer and has a nice taper, but it's about, actually might be a little thicker right at the pivot point. And speaking of the pivot point, now this one's working pretty well. That's because I've had this one for a good 10 years and I've broken it in. Let me close this one all up real quick. You'll see that this one is a little harder to open, and that's because this one's probably been open about a dozen times and it hasn't been broken in as much. These knives, when they first come, are true nail breakers. But nicely, if you can see here, the blades really nest in there well. And the screwdriver passes close, but it does not actually hit the can opener here. You can see that is also tighter too. Nice snap though when they're brand new. And here we have it, 10 years old. Snap is still pretty decent. And there's not a whole lot of blade wobble in there either. Even on the main blade, which has been used quite a bit. You can see the scratches and everything on there. It has been sharpened and used quite a bit, and probably abused a little bit because I even dug tree bark out with it and everything else. But the blade is still tight, even after 10 years of pretty good use on it. It's one of those knives I really do like to take out into the woods. So let's move on to the Reamer here. If you notice, the back side has a bevel to it. It's actually four-sided. It's flat here. It's got a little edge here, and it's no edge here, but there is a bit of an edge here, and a really good point on the tip here. And it's fairly long also. Let's see if I can actually get the length here on the Reamer. Yeah, it actually is almost 1 3/4 inches long, very close to 1 3/4 inches long, and it is sharp as the dickens. And I've actually drilled through wood with it, drilled in the tree bark, all sorts of things with it, and it's worked real well. And because of this little ridge here, it actually has quite a bit of strength to it. And if we can see here, even though I've used it quite a bit, this one is relatively straight. Brand new one. Let's see how it looks. Much flatter, if you can see there. I've got to get something behind there so we can see it a little bit. But it is flat as can be. It just goes flat on there. The reason I'm showing you that is if we look at this Baron Son one, this one I've never used, and it just has a nasty bend to it. And the reason it has that bend is because it's just flat. It's triangular in shape a little bit, but it's just a flat piece of 440 steel, and because of that, it actually came to me bent. It's also not nearly as long as the Rough Rider one. It's only about 1 1/4 inches maybe, whereas the, well, we just saw how long the Rough Rider one is. So as reamers go, it's really a good reamer on this knife. And that's basically because it's patterned off of the old case that was made by Camillus. So really sharp, really good reamer that comes with these knives. And I use the reamer a whole lot more than the can opener. Okay, so that's going to bring us back to the last blade on the knife, which is the main blade. And we'll take a look here. I showed it a little bit ago. It's made out of 440 razor sharp stainless steel. We see here, whoops, wrong side. we see here that the length of the cutting edge is a little over 2¼ inches. The overall length of the blade is right at let's get me, come on, focus, right at 2½ inches, so not a bad length of a blade. And if we look at the old case, or my case that I have, same thing, blade is about the same length, 2½ inches. And thickness wise, if we can compare them, I'll have to hold my hand behind there, I'm thinking. You can see the blade thickness is about the same. Actually, the case knife has about 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch more length on it. So it's a little bit longer. It's also a little bit skinnier, but both blades look really good. If we compare it to the Baron Sun, the Baron Sun blade is about the same length, maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit fatter, a little bit wider, has a little more drop to it. The Rough Rider has a more of a point to it. Thickness wise, they're both about the same. So the blade on this is actually really good, especially for modern day camp knives, and I really can't complain about it. Other things you'll see on the knife, if we see here, you see the Rough Rider horseshoe shield there, you see the ring nickel silver bolster, and you'll see the Rough Rider horseshoe on every blade. The tank stamp is on every blade. You've got the brass liners, brass pins, I already mentioned it's bone. The transition between the bone and the bolsters is really smooth. Really nice bail. It loosens up a little bit over time. It's much tighter when you first get it, but still very good. Here's another one of those tang marks. And if you notice, because of the little cutouts here, all of the tools kind of really lay in there flush. So it's a really nicely made knife and really top quality. I really have very few complaints about the Rough Rider Scout knives. I think they are probably, of the ones that are offshore production, these are probably some of the best you're going to find. Much better than the Kissing Cranes, much better than any of the Frost ones, better than my Coleman. Just a flat out terrific knife, and they're only about 12-15 bucks. Okay, so much for the praise. Let's move on to something I don't like about these knives. My biggest complaint about these knives is you have it in amber jig bone and red jig bone. And guess what? I'm not a fan of red jig bone. So I'm not crazy about the bone material on this one, even though I have it. And I wish they would come out with other bone material. I mentioned that I gave one of these away, and that is true. I gave away a red jig bone knife simply because I'm not crazy about the red jig bone, so I gave it to my son, and then I decided I'll go ahead and buy another one, so I bought that one. But on top of that, I also had another red jig bone knife that I wasn't crazy about either, and because I really like white smooth bone, I took the scales off and made my own. And I've begged Rough Rider forever to come out with one in white smooth bone, because I think this would be the perfect knife for scrimshaw work. The only thing that would be better are the Marlin Spike knives that they already have. And, I think it looks good in that. The only thing missing here are the pins. I really need to work on that. I'm not a person who does a lot of knife handling, and these are just crazy glued on. But if Rough Rider ever comes out with one in white smooth bone, I would buy it in a heartbeat. Also, Rough Rider has several series out there, like the Rifleman series and the Stroke of Luck series and the Moonshiner series and the Coal Miner series and such. And one series that I think just screams for a camp knife or a scout knife is their Outdoorsman series. And these are the knives with the tobacco smooth bone handle. I'll show you the saw belly in it. And it's really a nice bone handle, but more importantly is the the little acorn shield here, which Rough Rider uses on the Outdoorsman series, which originally showed up on some old Remington knives, I believe. But can you imagine any knife more outdoorsy than a camp or scout knife? How can this knife not already be in the Outdoorsman series? They've been making these knives for well over 15 years, and the Outdoorsman series has been around for almost as long, yet they've never bothered to put this knife in that series. And I think, I don't know how many times I've asked them to do it, but I think right now what I'm going to do is ask other people. If you're watching this video and you think that this camp knife should be in the Outdoorsman series, how about contacting Smoky Mountain Knife Works or Rough Rider on their Facebook page or their Twitter account, or just calling them up at their phone number and saying, hey, how about putting the camp knife in the Outdoorsman series? If nothing else, you'd be doing me a big favor, because I think they're tired of hearing from me on that. In any case, really love the camp knife. The only thing I would also suggest them do is go ahead and update it maybe a little bit and put in this can opener, so I won't end up cutting a finger off someday. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Just a quick look at the specifications of the knives. The 533 is the amber jig bone, and the 573 is the red jig bone. As always, thanks for dropping by, and remember, you're only as sharp as your knife.